Looking, I see none. Public appearances. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Commission regarding items not on the agenda. Seeing none, we will now move into closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957B to discuss public employee evaluation, titled Library Director. So the open session will reconvene no sooner than 7 p.m. And all right. we're all back. So we will get started again, calling the open session to order. It is 7:31, and pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.1, the report I am giving to you on the closed session was that we met with the director about the evaluation process for the year and discussed his goals for this evaluation process. And that's that. So at this time, if there are any library advisory boards or friends of the library who would like to make a presentation, this is your opportunity. Please come on down and introduce yourself. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Commission, Director Lear, everybody else. My name's Nancy Persons. I'm the chair of the Santa Rosa Library Branch's Library Advisory Board. So I just have a very quick report and an item for we would like the Commission to consider. So first of all, at our November 16th meeting, we discussed an idea that was put forward by the Sebastopol Library Advisory Board to review the goals of our branches of the library system and provide input to the branches on goals. So we started a discussion about that, and we discussed the importance of making our libraries relevant to our youth and what our youth are grappling with right now. And this meeting was just a couple of weeks after the election, so that was heavily on our minds. We asked the library staff if they would please bring us a list of goals that the staff have for the Santa Rosa branches for the coming year to our January 25th meeting. And they agreed to do that, so we're going to take the discussion up again at that point and provide them some input on what we think about goals at that point. Apropos of that, just a notice that we changed our regular meeting schedule, in part thanks to David, so that we could have the commission agenda in front of us more frequently than we do now, and so we could provide some input to commissioners that come to our meetings on our concerns or our, just general input on the commission agenda for upcoming meetings. So we'll be meeting the last Wednesday of every month, of every other month from now on. And finally, in the course of discussing the really wonderful homework help program that's been taking place and some other programs that were taking place, particularly at the Central Library, it was relayed to us by one of the lab members that some parents have come up to her and expressed their concern that they really want to come to these programs, but they're finding it a hardship that they have to pay to park when they come to the library, at the Central Library. So I just have a couple of quick points about that. Families wishing to participate in the homework help and the other fine programs at Central, we feel, are disproportionately impacted by the imposition of a fee if they wish to drive to the library to access services at the Central branch. Since our downtown isn't known to be one where there is a high residency for families, those accessing our services and resources at Central incur a fee that patrons of, I tried to think about it, I think all the other branches, if not all, certainly most, don't have to pay. So we would ask that the Commission please consider what we could do to assure that library patrons at Central don't have to incur undue financial costs when using the library. And that's all I have to report.
I have a question.
Yes.
And on your first point, was it in particular to reach out to youth? Was that the context?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes,
thank you.
Does somebody else have a question? Barbara? Commissioner McKenzie.
Hi, I just want to suggest perhaps if your friends group might subsidize, is that me?
It's probably
Subsidize the parking vouchers. I mean, friends groups like to be friends, and it wouldn't be a very expensive program, but they might pay for parking vouchers for them.
I can certainly take that back to them.
Any other questions from the commission? I was just going to ask if your group could also think of some suggestions for the commission. I think it's a very interesting puzzle for us. And things quickly flitted through my mind, but buy the parking lot.
We started going down that road at the meeting, and I cautioned the group that I felt like it wasn't our place to tell the commission.
No, but I think we're certainly open to
but
ideas.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Definitely do that.
Lovely.
Open to suggestions. Yeah, just a suggestion.
Great.
I was just going to say that probably really recently, because I hear this from, even library staff and volunteers and everything about the parking issues. So one thing we did is verify who owns that parking lot that's pretty much right across the street from Central, facing the post office. And we've looked into that and, even inquired whether the library could buy a certain number of spots, to make that area public parking. So I just wanted to let you know that it's something that library admin has looked into as well.
Thanks.
Barbara, sorry.
Back to kind of the big picture, I'm really, delighted that you came down here and you're talking about, and just kind of the way that a lot of us have envisioned, working closely with the labs. And I was very interested in your talking about changing your meeting to kind of align the agenda. So you're going to look at what the commission is going to discuss.
That's right.
At your meeting.
Right.
And then would you be coming down and talking to us about these particular items? I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking about? Because I think this is wonderful. I'm just wondering how it's,
this is new, so I don't know where it's going to go. I know due to my own personal schedule, I used to not be able to come to these meetings, and now I finally can. So we'll certainly try and encourage the other lab chairs to do the same thing. I would have to say in return, it was indeed thanks to a meeting that David was at where we wound up having this great discussion about what we envision the labs doing, and everybody's a little bit lost in terms of, what do the labs do? So we're trying to do something a little more purposeful, and it really injected our meetings with a lot of energy. So it's because of the commissioners, when they're able. Linda and David have been coming to our meetings as much as they can, and every time they're there, it's always a better thing. So
great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it? Thanks.
I think so, yeah. All right, so let's see, we have a suggestion that we move up the discussion items, as we have a presentation waiting in the wings from Mid-Penn Housing. So if no one objects, I think let's just move all the discussion items under item 11 up in front of item 7, the commission and liaison reports. So no objection? All right, so then do you want Mid-Penn to go before director's report, or you want to?
Sure, you can go before me. Yep.
Okay. So now we'll have item 11.3, the presentation by Mid-Penn Housing on the Roseland Village project. And we have Scott Johnson.
Could I just give a really quick kind of background on this?
Sure.
So probably back in the summer of, 2015, Ken? Library staff started meeting with members of the CDC, knowing that the Roseland Village project was about ready to get underway and a lot of the buildings on that site were going to be demolished. So we sat down with CDC to see if there was any way, maybe we could put a trailer or something in the parking lot that would provide some library services for Roseland. And then that grew, thankfully, to us being in the current site, which is a former furniture store. Now we're kind of on the cusp of putting our first staffer in that building. And then throughout, the CDC has been holding community conversations about what they want the Roseland Village to become. And thankfully, throughout, the citizens have said it's important for them to be to have a library on site. And now that Mid-Penn Housing has won the contract with the CDC, they've held some community conversations as well, and library continues to be a value of the community. So now that things are starting to kind of pick up speed a little bit with the project, I thought it'd be a good time to bring Mid-Penn Housing in to kind of give an overview of where the project stands now and what some of the next steps are. So thanks for coming. This is Scott Johnson.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, this is on? Yes. I was just told that I can raise this little contraption.
Good job.
My name is Scott Johnson, Mid-Penn Housing. Delighted to be here. In my 25 years of doing this work in Sonoma County, this is the first time in front of the Library Commission, so it's a pleasure. Perhaps some of you I know are familiar with the work of Mid-Penn. Others of you may not be. So I thought I'd just spend, one of our slides is, I'll flip through a couple slides and give you a brief background of who we are and what we do and how we go about doing it. Mid-Penn was formed a good 40 years ago in the South Bay. Bunch of Stanford professors and Packard family members and other members of the community who were interested and motivated 40 years back to try to tackle the issue of affordable housing. Came together literally out of a garage and formed Mid-Penn. And during the course of those 40 years, Mid-Penn has grown. I think it's fair to say to be one of the key larger regional nonprofit, community-based nonprofit housing organizations in Northern California. We operate on the basis of 3 separate nonprofits. I work for Mid-Penn Housing Development Company, and we take responsibility for the actual nuts and bolts of bricks and mortar and development and public approvals and working with stakeholders like Brett and his colleagues and yourselves within the library. We also have an allied nonprofit, Mid-Penn Property Management. So they provide professional property management for all of the homes that we develop and manage. And then more recently, we have a third affiliated sister nonprofit, which is our resident services nonprofit. And they take responsibility for working with our residents to help them attain, their highest aspirations while they live within our communities and within the larger community. Mid-Penn works in on a broad regional basis. We have development work that we pursue in 11 different counties, from Monterey County to the south on up to the North Bay, Sonoma and Napa County. Currently, Mid-Penn's first community building initiative in Sonoma County is currently underway. This is a mixed-use, affordable housing mixed-use development in Sonoma Valley in Fetters Hot Springs, in the Springs area. The first phase of that, which includes some fairly significant public benefit infrastructure, a shared use playground with an adjoining public school that we're developing, and a public bikeway. The Central Sonoma Valley Bikeway, an important leg of that bikeway, has been designed within the Sonoma Springs development. And Fedders Apartments is 60 family, deed-restricted, permanently affordable family apartments that are very close to being completed. We hope to be moving in 60 families this coming month in January. So I mentioned property management, development, resident services. Our resident services program, and this aligns nicely with the mission-driven work that the Commission and the library pursues. Our resident services focuses on adults, families, on youth, on seniors, and on people with special needs. So it's a comprehensive approach to assisting, as I previously stated, families that we house to attain their highest aspirations. Okay, so that's a quick background to Mid-Penn. As Brett mentioned, the county has been, both the county and the community have been working to envision the future development of the Roseland Village site for many years, as you all, I'm sure, are aware. In 2007, the Sebastopol Road Urban Vision Plan was adopted. 2011, the CDC actually purchased the site, and in 2015, they issued the request for proposals that Brett made reference to, led to Mid-Penn selection. We went there. That was a public engagement process, and we were very fortunate and very pleased to have been invited in to partner on this very important public-private partnership neighborhood building initiative. So that selection was made early in 2016, and over the course of this year, we've worked real closely with the CDC on a collaborative planning process that has involved many different stakeholders, including the Roseland community itself. We've had a number of different community forums, bilingual forums that we've facilitated. And we've had the benefit and the pleasure of engaging with library staff in that work. In July of 2016, the CDC released a request for proposals for what we call the civic social services component of our master plan. And that request for proposals was released by the CDC to identify one or more community servant partners to occupy one of the parcels in the buildings that comprised our mixed-use plan. This last month, I'm very pleased to report that we've actually submitted a formal planning application now to PRMD, so that process is formally now underway, the entitling and mapping process. And we're ready to engage in this next level of the planning process. So the development itself, we were selected on the basis of a concept plan that we brought forward. That concept plan has intentionally been designed physically and programmatically to match up with the community aspirations expressed through the Urban Vision Plan and through the various community meetings that we've held. It has 5 main components. It has a significant, robust residential component, and that residential component is made up of both affordable and market rate housing, so mixed income housing. That was an important feature of our proposal. We're proposing 75 apartments, deed restricted, permanently affordable apartments for families, in combination with 100 market rate apartments. The affordable would be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments, and the market rate is currently designed to accommodate 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. The proposal also includes a Mercado food hall. If I had a pointer, I would point this out, but there is one. Wow. Yeah. Oh, listen. Okay. That red button. Okay. Mercado Food Hub. This is approximately 6,000 square foot a food hall. This is intended to be a business incubator. A very important component of our master plan includes a 1 acre public plaza. 1 acre public plaza right along Sebastopol Road, Joe Rodota Trail, Sebastopol Road. The 1 acre public plaza has been a very important component of the of Roseland community's vision for this property. And it also includes, along the Sebastopol Road frontage, what is being proposed as a total 19,000 square foot civic services building. And we are in the process now of getting down to further detail with the library and its allies. Oops, sorry about that. With the library in getting a bit more detail on the program elements that will be incorporated in the civic building as it relates to the future Roseland Neighborhood Bilingual Library that has been a component of our development proposal from the beginning. This building is designed to function programmatically on a shared basis with another service provider, and through a process that, again, facilitated by the CDC, the Boys and Girls Club, we were directed to continue engaging negotiations with the Boys and Girls Club. And if those are successful, then this building would be designed physically, programmatically to function on a shared basis with the Boys and Girls Club. Library, Boys and Girls Club. That is the proposal.
I don't know if you want to specify, Scott, that wouldn't be that we're both in the same exact spot at the same time. It would probably be floors or walls.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. As I mentioned, this is a 19,000 square foot building, 2 floors. We are working closely with Brett and his team and with the Boys and Girls Club to finalize a design that would provide discrete, independent space for the library, most likely at this point proposed on the ground floor, with the Boys and Girls Club having their own separate, discrete program space, but all within a single building. We just went through that. And from a timeline standpoint, just real quickly, I mentioned that we've submitted our planning application. That planning application will go through a fairly engaged process through county PRMD. We would anticipate having final land use approvals in this coming year, and that being the case, we would hope to be into first phase construction, which is the plaza and the backbone infrastructure, We would hope that we would be launching that construction in 2018, followed by the individual phase-in of the market rate housing, and depending on how financing comes together on the other components, the civic, mercado, and the affordable housing. So it's with great delight that we've had the opportunity to engage with Sonoma County Library staff, and we look forward to moving the proposal forward.
Questions? I saw Tom's hand first. Sorry, Paul.
I just want to be clear that you're talking about 19,000 square feet, so that would be 9,500 for the ground floor, 9,500 upstairs.
Roughly.
Roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly downstairs would be for the library. So we're talking
Roughly.
about less than 10,000. Okay. Thank you.
And I have a question that has to do with your overall plan and probably nothing with the library, but you used in your dialogue incubator.
Business incubator, yes. Food-based business incubator that would be focusing on the already present, very entrepreneurial food-based startups in Roseland.
And a model that facilitates them to become more professional and things
Yes.
like that? Thank
Yes.
you.
Tim.
I have a question that I just want to be clear when this building is done, who owns it?
I don't have a clear, definitive answer for you at this time. The concept, the modeling that we've brought forward from the very beginning is that the quote-unquote civic parcel and building would be owned by an entity other than Mid-Penn. So in this case, the Boys and Girls Club has stepped forward and articulated an interest. If negotiations are successful, they've indicated that they would be in position to purchase the parcel, the building, and lease the ground floor space to the library. So at this point, we are proceeding on that basis.
Okay.
Still many details to unfold.
It's the big picture.
I'm sorry?
The big picture.
That is the very brief, big picture.
All right, I see Tom has another question.
I have a question for staff. The city of this is the city of Santa Rosa property, or it's going to be if it isn't right now. Has there been discussion with them about financing and buying or doing any of the stuff that the Boys and Girls Club may be discussing?
Not recently, about a few months back, knowing that annexation was in the works and all that, I sat down with city staff at that point to talk to them, but I have not yet looped back. One meeting I have planned is to try to get various people in the room that probably are going to be involved in some way or another in the financing. And that's a meeting that I could, see if we could get city staff to attend. But my impression has been until all of the specifics and timelines and that, get worked out around annexation, the city hasn't appeared to be eager to say that it's going to. They've just been very close to the vest about what their involvement will be in this project. But I'm certainly aware that at some point the property will be within the boundaries of Santa Rosa.
The reason I'm concerned is because if we're talking about renting from the Boys and Girls Club, they may have expectations of market rate rents as opposed to our standard procedure of essentially no rent. We maintain it, they build it kind of thing. And so that would be very different. And I think it would be incumbent upon us to be approaching the city of Santa Rosa right now in terms of expectations about what they're going to do about that branch inside the city limits, as well as the Northwest branch inside the city limits. Are they going to take responsibility?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Certainly, Ken, our CFO, and I, with anybody that we've spoken to, whether it's Mid-Penn or the CDC or anything, we've been pretty clear that, you know, the business model right now that SCL works under is that, you know, it's given the keys to buildings, and then we provide the staff and the computers and the books and the other services. So with the various entities that we've spoken to up until now, we've made it clear that that's what we would see as the business model going forward.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? I have a couple. So you turned the plans into the permits into PRMD last month, and how long does that take?
Well, to get to the ultimate action item, which is approval of precise development plan and a tentative map, that we will need to work pretty hard and very focused in a motivated way with PRMD to move that towards approval in summer of this coming year.
All right.
So we're aiming for summer of this coming year.
Okay, to start the work at that point?
To receive the land use, the entitlements, the ability to have an approved mixed-use master plan development that has a tentative map that allows for the subdivision of the properties. We would then be engaging in plan check approval, the approvals of actual construction documents for the various phases. And as I mentioned, the first phase will be the backbone infrastructure that supports all of the elements, along with the new public plaza, will be phase one.
Okay, so the start of the building, the earliest start you think will be 2018, late 2018?
That's being aggressive, yes.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a picture of what that library branch will be doing in the ensuing time period, because this is the same property, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, it is. Yep.
So in the meantime, the library branch is going to have to, by the end of 2018, move to other quarters.
Yeah.
And we've only now begun to engage in that dialogue with staff and CDC. But we're fully aware. We intentionally attempted to come forward with a design that preserved that building that the library is in until to allow for the development of that first phase without compromising that building. So we were very intentional in bringing forward a circulation plan, an infrastructure plan, a plaza plan that mostly, not completely, accomplishes that goal.
Okay.
I had a similar question. I think that the temporary facility will probably move once before a permanent library is built. I asked that question of the CDC, and Jim Leddy said that he's committed to keeping library services somewhere in the vicinity of that site, but knowing that furniture store will have to come down at some point, I think we will probably have one more temporary location before a permanent site is built.
And the annexation hasn't gone through yet, right? That's still in process?
That's in process, yeah.
It's very complicated.
It is very complicated. The specific plan, the Roseland area specific plan and its accompanying EIR has been adopted. That was a major step. The city and the county have reached agreement on their pre-annexation agreement that lays out, that municipal agreement.
Yeah.
So those are all excellent steps, and it should be moving forward to LAFCO. The annexation itself should be moving forward to LAFCO soon.
So one more question, then I'll let Paul ask a question. That is, so if the Boys and Girls Club is saying that they would like to buy the building, there must be a dollar value on the building now for them to be able to say that. Do we know what that is?
Not yet. Nope.
So they're buying price. Yeah. Okay.
We have not reached a dollar certain in our negotiations.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the library could consider, if the city isn't going to pick it up at some point, if if it's something that we could consider purchasing ourselves.
Corporate money.
We would love to entertain that
Just
possibility.
give us a good price.
Yeah, we could.
Drop my question.
I have one more.
Tim?
Looking at the map,
Yes.
where is the furniture store now?
Oh. Okay. So the furniture store is it's roughly right around here, right there. We've also assembled an adjoining parcel. We're in contract with a separate non-CDC-owned parcel. So there's 2 parcels that comprise our overall plan. But the furniture store is right around here, roughly.
And so basically this building would be in what's the parking lot now for the furniture store?
The question again, I'm sorry?
The building would be in what's now the parking lot for the furniture store?
The library.
Oh, the future library?
Yeah.
The future library is in what is currently a parking lot area.
Okay.
Yes. I think that's what you just
what I
affirmatively stated. Yes.
Okay, anything else? Barbara?
Oh, yeah, I just had a couple more map questions. I don't see any letters that correspond to the parcels.
Uh-oh.
Can't see them on mine. But it says future open space parcel F. Could you show us what that is?
I'm sorry. Yes. So we are obligated to extend this is West Avenue, and the Urban Vision Plan very specifically calls for the extension of West Avenue through the CDC parcel to allow for the future connection to other adjoining parcels and then connecting westward, I guess that is. So what we have designed is a cul-de-sac at the end of our new West Avenue extension, and once that extension goes forward by others, right, across neighboring properties, this section of the cul-de-sac will be redeveloped into a parklet, additional open space.
So that's not a roundabout.
This is a roundabout, yes.
It is a roundabout, but it's a roundabout
Well,
cul-de-sac?
roundabout. It's a cul-de-sac, is what I meant to say. Yes.
Doesn't look like
Yep.
a cul-de-sac. So the open space is going to be on the other side of the roundabout /
The open
cul-de-sac.
space would basically be this section of the quote-unquote roundabout.
And then extend farther?
No. It would remain within the property that we currently
Okay.
have use of.
So it's not a lot of open space.
Well, we have a 1 acre park.
Right.
1 acre park, which is a huge amount of open space. And then when West Avenue does go through and connect to these other properties, then that will be converted to additional open space. The whole intent along the Joe Rodota Trail is to incentivize an improvement to the bicycle experience, and so this whole area is being designed with that in mind, and that future parklet will be picking up some of that theme.
Could you show again where the Joe Rodota Trail is on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, this is the Joe Rodota. It extends along our frontage right here.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Connecting, we're within a half a mile to the Santa Rosa Downtown Smart Station site. So, we're very focused on the transit.
Transportation.
Yes.
And where's the smart station? Roughly?
Well, it's off the graph up here, half a mile, up that way.
I didn't see where your red dot was.
Oh, I'm sorry.
By the M.
Yeah, up here.
Okay.
Joe Rodota, it goes under the freeway and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
And I just want to say that when we finish this section of discussion items, we'll invite public comment too. So now we'll move to the director's report, 11.1.
Good evening. I'll keep my report brief because a lot of what I've been working on carries forward from what I said I was working on last month. The senior management team, which is made up of the CFO, the head of IT, the head of public services, and me, we continue to meet daily around the implementation of Measure Y, looking at how to get these libraries open on Monday in April, what other services we'll bring online at that time, events, more books and that, and then continuing to plan out for the next several years around Measure Y. So that one continues to be a big job. Something else that's been taking up a fair amount of time lately is the presentation that just occurred today. Now that Mid-Penn is starting to submit paperwork and that, we've been having quite a few conversations with Mid-Penn and also the CDC. Something that I've instructed staff to do is to work with a local architect so that when Mid-Penn starts coming to the library saying, you know, could you operate a facility under this number of square feet or that number of square feet, that we would have some very specific both numbers to react to, but also to be clear on, you know, if we were to put a library in the space that they're offering, you know, could we carry out basic library functions, you know, the materials that we need for adults, the materials we need for children, open space for children to interact, a meeting room and all that. So I think staff have done a nice job with getting some of that initial information to where now we can have productive meetings with Mid-Penn. And I'm happy to share any of that with you all. It's mostly schematics that break a building down into themes around adult services and youth services and staff and that. But that's an ongoing process. And then thirdly, I'm continuing to work with staff and Jamie Anderson and others to, you know, in light of Measure Y funding and where we're at now with implementing the strategic plan, really looking at gaps that exist between the things that we say we want to do and we haven't started yet. But what I think we'll end up doing is looking at the entire strategic plan one more time and perhaps moving some things up and some things down, but just to make sure that we're focusing on the right things, that we're not falling behind in the plan. So those are the big things I've been working on, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Is 10,000 square foot, do we have any libraries that are that small of a footprint?
Yeah, so all along, I mean, I was guessing that since, you know, the overall space that the whole Roseland Village project has to work with is somewhat confined, and knowing that it's going to be housing and retail and all that, I was anticipating that probably the biggest location that they would offer us is around 10,000. But conversations have gone anywhere from, you know, 4,000 and something up to nearly 10. And with the work that we did with the architect, we feel that we need at the very least somewhere around 8. And that would also mean that we'd be willing to carry out some operations differently than we've historically carried them out. So we might look at how we move materials around in that building and whether we could do some things differently than the other libraries that have traditionally done them. But that's why I think Scott said the costs right now are unknown, because you have the library and the Boys and Girls Club both, you know, telling Mid-Penn what they think they need, and right now, you know, there's probably a difference between wants and where reality will kick in.
Okay, thank you.
Brad, aren't you meeting with a group that includes a Santa Rosa City Council person looking at the future of raising funds for the Roseland Library and all that stuff?
Yeah, so that's another upcoming meeting. I've asked members of, you know, there's a group out there called the Roseland Coalition that's starting to do fundraising around a permanent Roseland library. Then there's our own library foundation. So I'm trying to bring these people together with Mid-Penn and the CDC to try to start to hear what the cost of this building will be, and you know, what will be paid for, perhaps by the CDC and or Mid-Penn. There's also supposedly some county money that's been set aside for a permanent library, so we need to find out about that. and then any capital campaign fundraising that needs to occur to make up the gap of funding. I want to know what that would be fairly soon, and then see if our support groups think that they could meet that gap.
David?
Monday openings, are we still looking at the same time frame that we looked at last month, which is, I think,
April 3rd.
April, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're still on track for doing that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Barbara?
I wanted to thank you for the photos in the report. It's neat to see what's going on in Cloverdale. I wondered if there's going to be a grand opening party when Cloverdale is done.
Well, Keo and I have been talking about that, and Keo wanted to go soft, and I did not want to go soft. So, the day we open, there will be a grand opening, a ribbon cutting and that, and we're going to work with the Friends on that because the Friends are excited to help with the opening, but there will be a grand opening.
And thank you. And my other question was, I see that you attended this very interesting conference, the Aspen Institute Dialogue on Public Libraries, and I was curious if you came home with any great ideas about championing new thinking on U.S. public libraries with the goal of fostering concrete actions to support and transform public libraries for a more diverse, mobile, and connected society. It sounds exciting, but was it really big picture, or did you come back with some concrete ideas?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking about it. Helene asked me about it as well. It was by invite only, so I was really pleased to get an invitation to attend. And right now, there's only one or two sites in the U.S. that the Aspen Institute is visiting. It's more of a process, and it's based on a report that Aspen Institute put out, I think about a year ago, where they talk about libraries as places, people, and then also platforms, where libraries are becoming a place where you go to create or make something. And I shared with Elena, there's a whole handbook around the process. So it was more the process that I really enjoyed learning about. It's similar to what we did with our strategic plan. The first steps are you get library staff together and you look at things like innovation and community engagement and pick one or two of those areas to focus on. And then you start meeting with community leaders and getting verification that those are things that the community wants the library to focus on. And then what I went to is kind of the culmination of the process, where you spend a whole day with just a variety of people, the mayor, business leaders, different agency heads, citizens, where you, throughout the course of the day, really do try to create a path forward for the library system around these certain themes. So the state librarian was there, and I really asked him if he'd consider spending state money on funding a few more of these throughout California, because I'd love for us to be able to do it here.
Go ahead, Tom.
The Y expenditure plan, that's still being worked on. Is that what you were saying? I think the sequence of what's going to happen. We prioritize the open on Mondays as the first thing, but weekends and evenings and stuff, that's still in fluid.
So what I've been working on with Ken and Vicki and others is, knowing that the voters voted yes on this, and knowing that the revenue doesn't start coming in until next year, what things could we do sooner rather than later? And that probably will mean staff putting forward a budget adjustment request to fund these things. But right now, the biggie is to open on Mondays in April, and the associated costs with staffing and that. So, that was what the presentation was last month, where staff, revealed those intentions. I think as far as how we flow money into, Measure Y money into the overall budget, I'd expect that Ken, through the Finance Committee, will start revealing what he sees next fiscal year's budget as being, and it would include those monies. But I think that would primarily be how we would have a conversation with the commission around Measure Y funds, is by showing, how that money will roll into the FY 17-18 budget and how we're proposing to allocate those funds.
I'd like to switch over to the position announcements, and where in here is the Roseland position? It's not here. The position announcement? The Roseland position announcement?
It's because we're still meeting and conferring about that with the union, right, Patrick?
Correct.
There's a meet and confer process right now with the union around that position. So there was a meeting Friday, is that?
There was a meeting on Friday, and the next meeting is this Wednesday.
Tim?
Yeah, I have a question about the additional office space. How's that proceeding? How much of the central staff do you think may be moved, et cetera?
Yeah, it's pretty urgent because, right now, every time we bring someone in who's going to have a desk space at Central, we're literally out of space. So Angelina, we put her in the history and genealogy building. So knowing all the hires that we're going to do and the number of those that'll end up at Central, we got to get this figured out before April. So I know Ken and Fergus have been looking around the county at various spaces because there are a few spaces available in Santa Rosa. It has to be a warehouse setting with a loading dock and that. And you're also, aren't you, Ken, now starting to look outward in Windsor and everywhere else?
Yeah.
Let me jump to the answer and the rest of that, and then I'll go back to Ken. But as far as who gets moved, I think we've been pretty transparent about that. Right now we're talking about moving the materials management folks, the collection folks, although that's one person really, David. But moving those folks off-site and then seeing what other key positions make sense to go along with those people, maybe the graphics artist. But just moving the materials management people is a pretty high majority of the people that are down there. And then we have to figure out what to do with that space once people move out. And right now, the workspace for the central staff is pretty poor. So one opportunity would be to give the central staff better workspaces by renovating the downstairs, in addition to giving space to the new people that we would hire. And Ken, do you want to give an update on where you're looking around the county?
Yes, we've instructed the leasing agent we're working with to, we wanted to keep it central, and we were trying to keep it in Santa Rosa, but there's not much around here. We've looked at a couple buildings in Santa Rosa, but we've asked them to look at Rohnert Park, Katati area, and also up as far north as Windsor, but we wanted to keep it fairly central to the county because we're going to be moving all our facilities, vehicles, delivery vehicles there, and then a lot of the books that come in through materials management, that'll be in that area too, but they'll be going out to different places.
How many square feet do you need?
Office space, we're probably looking at 6,000 to 8,000 square feet, and then we need a secure place to park our vehicles. Right now we have 5 vehicles, but we're also anticipating adding to that fleet as we ramp up with Measure Y. So that's also a key indicator. And then the warehouse space we're looking at is to house the fleet and also all the books that materials management push out through delivery and everything. So that'll be a little bit bigger. And then we're also investigating space that we may or may not be able to move the archives to.
Thank you.
If we're moving the archives, what's going in there? That space?
They're tearing that building down in the future, as far as I know. It's the county building.
The archives are at Las Gillicas.
I imagine that you're not seeing this happen before the new budget because this will be a new expense.
Actually, no. As Brett mentioned, we're probably hoping to get it moving around the same time as we're opening Mondays in April, because we're going to be hiring a lot of people. We need to get a space for our vehicles fairly quickly, as the county is. They've diminished the size of their parking lots, and are telling us that they no longer will have space for us to park out of theirs.
So basically, we're going to be having a budget adjustment.
Yes.
Okay.
So do you have any free time?
A little bit, but.
Could I just ask, do we have a date when the Cloverdale is, it says mid-December here, and do we have an actual date when it's?
You'd have that, Ken, right? The latest?
Yeah, the latest is, we're not sure about the date right now. We found out on Friday that that the service desk may not arrive when they said it was going to, and we're working on hopefully speeding that schedule up, and I hope to know tomorrow morning when that'll be. So.
Okay, so if there's a grand opening, will you let the commission know so that we can?
We will. Definitely.
Thank you. That would be greatly appreciated. And I just wanted to ask about the arrangements for Northwest when that starts the end of January. What's going to happen with stuff?
I'm not sure we'll be shutting the library down as early as the end of January. That's kind of in flux also. But Fergus has also talked with Cottingtown Mall, and they have a few spaces, varying in sizes that we could move a temporary library that's similar to what we're doing up in Cloverdale right now, or even make it a little bit bigger. And so people, but that's still in the works. We're trying to figure that out. But the mall seems like they want us in there.
Great. And then I have another question, and we'll check back with the commission on anything else. But can you remind me what facilities preventative maintenance paperless process is?
Thank you.
Yeah, Vicki can speak to it a little bit better, but.
Okay, so what this is we have a work order system that was designed by a previous employee. So when there is something wrong with the building, it's an email database system that lets you alert facilities of a problem or something that needs to be fixed and so forth. So what we've done is contracted with the designer of that program, and we're adding some features to it. So it's basically software development so that annually and quarterly and monthly, the facilities staff perform maintenance on different things like the air handling system, air conditioning, heating, you name it. And so this way they'll be able to load up the system and then be alerted themselves paperlessly when a preventative maintenance is scheduled. So it's a pretty solidly designed system, and probably purchasing one would be like extremely costly when this one is perfectly capable of supporting that. So what we've done is I've sat down with Fergus and David Lytle, who designed the original system, and we've actually laid out additional features that we want and some pretty interesting reporting features as well, so that when it's completed, which probably about 3 weeks will be done with our testing. We're testing it on a test server right now, and then we'll move it over to a production server so that we can put it into into production for their preventative maintenance and to augment the existing facilities work order system.
Yeah, right now, the work order system works pretty well where each of the facilities guys have a tablet that they carry around with them, and they can access that from anywhere they are in the county. They can also update it from that. So when people are putting work orders in, they're seeing them instantly, and if they're up in Cloverdale doing something and someone puts an emergency work order in at Windsor, then on the way back down they can stop and take care of it, and things can be updated. And this is just, like Vicki said, to make it bigger and broader, so all the preventative maintenance is also on the same system.
Right. Maybe at some future date, a demonstration could be shared with the commission. Interesting. Tim, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking about future Mayor McKenzie's speaking at the last meeting about whether we have a plan to speak to the Mayor's Council about implementation of Measure Y, and I was wondering if that was proceeding.
No, we don't have a plan, but I'm sure that will happen at some future date in the coming year. I can't remember if I don't think he gave did he give a particular date
No, I think they meet every other month.
Right. So, but it seems like it would be something that we certainly could do.
Yeah, I'll put it on my to-do list to start working on a time to come before them, and imagine it might be good for a commissioner to come as well. So,
the chair volunteers.
It's a good dinner.
I know. All right. If there are no other comments about the.
Actually, I have one comment about size of libraries in the Roseland that we got off of. Sonoma Valley and Sebastopol both have 10,000 square foot libraries for comparison purposes, if you've seen either one of those.
Right, and Sebastopol feels theirs is not big enough for the activity that they have. So,
well,
yeah.
I think the draft report that I was reading says Sonoma is too small also.
Right, that they should each have about another 5,000 to 10,000 square feet. Yeah. All right. So, any other questions about the director's report, or we kind of always segue into the written monthly activities report. So, were there any other questions about that? And if not, then we will move on to the financial report.
Okay, the financials are right after the management report there. I'm not sure what page number it is, but October is a pretty uneventful month, historically speaking. We had $57,000 in revenue. Most of that was the interest that we earned from the county's pooled cash, and then library services, which is the fines and fees and some copier charges. We continue to move along with the expenses. There are a couple things that are over budget currently that will come into line, and those two items are listed on the page there, and they're the same ones that were on there for the past couple months. And then down below there were two things that went over the $25,000 threshold to be reported each month, the PG&E and the Sears Dynex, the annual maintenance expense that you approved a few months ago to be paid. Other than that, nothing really significant to speak of. The first property tax deposit into our account will be happening within probably the next 2 weeks. That usually comes in about the 18th or 19th of December, and that will be reflected in the December financials. But it's about where it is right now. Any questions?
Apparently not.
All right.
Thanks, Ken. All right, so now we will go back to item number 7, the commission and liaison reports. And the first is the commissioner reports at item 7.1. And let's start with Commissioner May.
Things in Hawaii were, no. First of all, I would like to comment on the fact that I believe this is Patrick's last meeting. And so I would like to personally thank him for his years of service to our institution. And you've been through some rough times, and I appreciate your steadfast diligence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick.
Other than that, the Petaluma Lab is currently working on digitizing their minutes throughout the whole years of the lab so that we can begin to do some other research. And that's pretty much my report.
Commissioner Heavenridge.
The Guerneville Lab will meet January 7th.
They have a book sale coming up this Wednesday, don't they?
They do. Well, yes, they do. Thank you for mentioning that. The River Friends of the Library will have their 2016 Holiday Books and Bake Sale, December 7th, and that's Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And also Thursday, December 8th, and Friday, December 9th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and Saturday, December 10th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it's a $4 book sale day. I'm not quite sur. I think that's, you can buy
the sack
for $4. So thank you for reminding me.
Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes, thank you. Our lab in Rohnert Park Cotati meets on December 20th, and there is one opening on our lab. So anyone that you know that might be interested, let them know, please. Our Friends group met right after the last commission meeting, and so I went to the Friends group just to let them know the good news about the April openings, and they were very interested. And particular impact on Rohnert Park Cotati branch is that, we're one of 2 branches that has a bookstore. Our bookstore is open virtually the entire time the branch is open, so this means gearing up the volunteers to be, getting more volunteers. So the bookstore is also staffed on Mondays. So there is a specific impact. I wanted them to know about it. I also thank them for their significant contribution to the support of Measure Y, and they were grateful to hear this information. Secondly, I am trying to organize a meeting of the Rohnert Park Historical Society president and the history and genealogy librarian, plus our branch manager, plus Keo. We're looking at the Rohnert Park archives for the Historical Society. There's boxes and boxes of materials, and there's photos, and I called Catherine Reinhardt and I said, is there any possibility of digitizing some of this? So anyway, we're trying to put together a meeting, which has been, gathering cats and hard to get a date down, but we're going to work on that. It's an interesting thought in terms of, the future, other connections for digitizing other collections. I know Catherine said they were working on something right now with the city of Santa Rosa and the Luther Burbank facility. So anyway, I'm receiving lots of congratulations on Measure Y. There's a huge amount of excitement everywhere I go, and they've been telling everybody and their brother that we're opening on first Monday in April. So I just glad that we were confirming that tonight. I also went to an event Saturday night, which was a huge, big Christmas lights festival we had in Rohnert Park. It was bigger than ever, and it was Saturday night. And our branch manager was singled out as really helping this happen because apparently there are a lot of light connections that we ran out of our library because the library's right next to the plaza. So anyway, I wanted to thank Nancy Cleveland and Absentia for helping with that because apparently it was very, very important. And I had a little item here called Sharing Good News. I was really thrilled with this Towns article, and I was so impressed by this. And one thing I thought, all of our branches should do this. I think it's so cool. The fire guys came and all the little kids were in awe. Anyway, it's a wonderful article, but kind of on the bigger picture, I'm wondering if what I would really like to do as commissioner is to get this kind of stuff so then I can share it on Facebook. Sometimes I see it, but it's kind of random, and I just wondered if we could have like a maybe better system so we knew about it and we could, share it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Ebright.
I was unable to attend the Santa Rosa lab meeting in November, so it was very nice to see Ms. Persons here and give her report, and that was very helpful. And the engagement of that group seems to be quite strong, so I'm appreciative of that. And on Wednesday, December 7th, a parkette, a small park, is opening basically in the parking lot in front of our Roseland Library branch. So I guess it'll be there, our hours are Wednesday evening in Roseland, and then when it opens on Thursday morning, there is a new park right in front of that library. So
What's going on?
it's a nice addition for our patrons to be able to access that outdoor area there.
Interesting. Thank you. Sorry.
Nothing really to report from Windsor. However, I went to the Healdsburg lab meeting to cover for Paul Grill, who was traveling.
The Sebastopol doesn't meet until this Wednesday. We are tonight, I hope, appointing a new library advisory board member. They are a little short on members, contrary to some of the experiences in the past. But and I think we have a new application also for an additional person to join the LAB. Just a little bit of news from Sebastopol. Due to some absence last month, Matthew, the branch librarian, hosted story times on Tuesdays and was very delighted to do so, and had many of the attendees teach him how to do story time all over again. So that was a good experience for him. He recently attended the Sebastopol Mayor's Breakfast, the focus of which was on nonprofit leaders in Sebastopol. And he said there were 15 or so nonprofits that shared ideas on how to better collaborate and where their efforts could have broader impact. So he came away with some really good ideas and a better understanding of where the library branch in Sebastopol can help support the community. Emma attended the Internet Librarian Conference in Monterey and has brought back some great ideas to share from that. And Michelle invited the Children's Museum recently to co-host a special Build Club, which is a monthly science-based program for children to learn physics and architecture through play. And the special Build Club that the Children's Museum participated in was focused on electricity and circuitry. And then Emma very bravely hosted a catapult program for teenagers, helping them to build and design catapults. So we may be reading about that in the local news. So they're very active in Sebastopol. And we'll move on to Commissioner Smith.
I have nothing to report.
I guess I'd start off with thanking Randall for covering for me. I don't know somebody suggested at some point that we use that, and in that essence, I owe Randall once for when he's, taking the first jet to Mars or whatever. Secondly, I will be speaking at the Friends. Originally, I just wanted to go and thank them for their contribution and efforts in Measure Y, and I see that I've been roped into a whole litany of things to report to them. One of them being about the new plans for the building and guidelines, and also the Friends just finished their book sale in Healdsburg and was relatively successful, but I think. As all book sales seem to be, they're trending down. That's my reading.
Thank you. The Sonoma County Library Foundation executive director has resigned, and as a result, they were coming together to see what they were going to do about that, and I have yet to know whether I will be attending next Wednesday's meeting as a result of that. Secondly, I would like to thank, again, Randall, our chair, David Ebright, and Reese for attending the Latino Service Provider meeting that was hosted by the library. Angela helped put that together as outreach and did that in November. And our commissioners came out on a rainy, crummy day to be out there for a small group, but it was a beginning. So I really appreciate Angelina putting it together. So thank you.
Sonoma is going to have, I think, its last combined Library Advisory Board and Friends meeting on Thursday, and they decided that it's confusing, so they're separating. And also, it'll be very short because it's a Christmas party, and so that's nice.
All right, thank you, everybody. And I should also mention that Sebastopol Friends did have their children's book sale this last weekend, and I don't know how well it did, so I'll report that next time. Now we move on to item 7.2, Committee and Liaison Reports, and 7.2.1, Director Evaluation. Commissioner Smith.
Yes, the Directors Evaluation Committee met last Friday, December 2nd, to discuss our process for the Directors Evaluation. No action was taken at that meeting, and I would like to remind people that those meetings are agendized and posted, and members of the public are welcome to attend and speak to the committee before we move to closed session. So please know that you're welcome.
And 7.2.2 is our Finance Committee. Commissioner McKenzie.
Yes, thank you. The Finance Committee met on Monday, November 21st in the library conference room. Commissioners McKenzie, Whistler, Fox, and Neff, and Director Lear and CFO Neiman were all present. Commissioner Tom Hauser also attended to observe the committee, and we are very happy to report that he is now joining the Finance Committee, so we will have a full complement of 5 members on our committee, which is wonderful. No other members of the public attended this meeting. Commissioner Hauser brought, am I saying your name right? Hauser? Good. Brought along an article from his local newspaper regarding the passage of the school bond measure over there in Sonoma, and this ran in the newspaper right after the election. He pointed out that this was no doubt the result of a press release, and that this was a good way to let the public know what was going to happen with the proceeds of a successful measure. He inquired about our having a press release, and since one hasn't been done, the committee suggested that this happen and that we be informed about it. So I haven't followed up on that yet. The monthly October financial reports, which Ken has already gone over, we reviewed and discussed those. As he said, the only bills over $25,000 were the large PG&E bill and the annual maintenance agreement for our software. We are looking forward to further updates on lowering the PG&E bill as Mr. Wilson continues to look at energy efficiency when he assesses our facilities, and we work toward updating our facilities. We received and discussed 2 very helpful documents from Ken, the timeline for the service plan changes prior to the next budget year, and also a timeline for the budget process for the 2017 and 18 budget. As reported in October, the Finance Committee now has the budget as a topic at every meeting, so we can stay better in tune with the process throughout the year. And lastly, the committee again discussed the formation of the OPEB ad hoc committee to consider how large this committee should be, who we should include from the community, how often it should meet, and so forth. We will look at this in more detail at our December meeting, which will be on December 19th at 3 o'clock in the library conference room. Thanks very much.
Great. And item 7.2.3, the Advocacy/Public Relations Group. Commissioner Foxen isn't here, but I believe that there is somebody giving a report for that group.
Well, this is a combination for the Revenue and Advocacy Public Relations report. Let's see. The first thing. Well, can I do the revenue first? I'm going to switch it around. Okay. So for the Revenue Enhancement Committee, this may be the last report because the committee is seeing its work is done. And we met on Monday, November 21st, and it was Reese Foxon and Barbara McKenzie and myself, and Brett and Ken joined us later. But we had a short discussion prior to the meeting. We agreed that the Revenue Enhancement Committee has been an absolutely necessary one as we progress through the process for Measure Y. But it may be we've done our work since we had a successful Measure Y completion to that. So every person on the committee needed to gain basic knowledge of variances in the major revenue streams that supports the library. I'm not talking about all the work we did, so since it's the last report, this is my last chance to talk about it. How property taxes were constructed and have played out for 40 years. What general taxes should actually be used for, capital improvements, no operating expenses, how parcel taxes impacted various community members. Finally, the sales tax, how it stands up to other taxes and the equity issues involved. So we spent a lot of time looking at that, and I do have to give a tip of the hat to Reese, because she really did the bulk of the work here and prepared PowerPoints and charts and all sorts of wonderful data. So after looking at all this, we recommended moving forward with what became known as Measure Y. And the Revenue Enhancement Committee has been, we think, an essential part of establishing the foundation for adding a revenue stream approved by the voters to our budget base. So, though advocacy must continue, but anything but the Revenue Enhancement Committee might do would most likely be redundant at this point. So we are suggesting that we disband for now, and maybe in the future there may be a need for us. So that's our recommendation from the committee. Anybody have any discussion on that? Any comments?
May I just make one comment?
Yeah.
Well, two comments. One is I second your applause for Reese, who just did an astonishing amount of research and did just tons of work on this. It really was essential to make our case that we needed a separate, we needed to turn over every stone, which we did, and we had no choice but to go forward with the tax measure. And I also want to emphasize again that some of this work will be folded into the advocacy committee. We're not just dropping it and say we never want look for any money from anybody else. But as advocacy committee develops relationships with corporations and service clubs and so forth, there'll be some opportunity to potentially add revenue from those streams also. So we're not dropping the work, we're just really folding appropriate, work into the work of the advocacy committee. Thank you.
Should I go in the advocacy? Okay. The advocacy committee met on Monday, November 21st. Reese Foxon and Paul Gerwell in attendance. Let's see. The discussion addressed advocacy from the Commission's perspective. The first steps are those close to home, including those with the library advisory boards, the various friends groups, the Sonoma County Foundation, defining and clarifying the roles of the commissioners in relation to their friends groups, finding and maintaining a connection to, but not immersing into the friends groups is the key to the commissioner relationship to those independent supporters of the library. So that's some of the discussions the advocacy group has been having. The library advisory board's roles are being discussed and clarified by the Standard Operating Procedures Ad Hoc Committee. Tim May is going to be doing some research, I understand, according to this report, and returning to the committee with his findings, at which time the Standard Operating Procedures, SOP, committee will begin its work. We began the discussion of improving relations with the Sonoma County Library Foundation and its board. Linda, who is not present, is the Commission's liaison with the Foundation. We opened up topics such as that, what that relationship would look like, and what we as commissioners need to do to facilitate that relationship. This is just the beginning of the discussion. Of course, community outreach is part of the discourse. The advocacy began with Measure M and expanded with Measure Y. Must be continued to keep the conversations with the community going and to keep everyone informed of the strides made by the library. Moving beyond our community into the state and national realms means connecting with the California American Library Associations. We need to define the pathways to these organizations in order to have the maximum impact. And finally, our work is very much a work in progress. So those are some of the areas we started to discuss. We have been focused on survival now we must focus on reaching out. The advocacy does not stop with the passage of Measure Y. It is just the beginning of keeping the connections with the community, those who help direct the community, keep those who are directing the community informed, and even more becoming an integral part of our community as it moves forward, as part of which people are always aware. So the advocacy committee is not disbanding, it's going forward. And those are some of the issues that we're talking about. Okay?
Something to that. So also, Angelina is going to be joining the advocacy committee. And secondly, we also built a model to prioritize the particular agencies, i.e. the Library Foundation, on through, prioritize them in an order of 1 through 4 or 5, and the reasons, the pro reasons to go after somebody for advocacy, and the negatives of that, and to distill that into a model that we can move forward with.
Great. Thank you very much. 7.2.5 Foundation Liaison, Commissioner Garcia.
As I mentioned, the executive director has resigned, and the foundation is deciding what they're going to do, whether to go on without one or not. And that does not really include me in that discussion. It includes the foundation. The foundation, as a rule, did a lot to support Measure Y in terms of money and energy. And I have thanked them, and I know that Brett has done the same. And so right now, I have nothing new to report, and I'll know whether I'm going to the meeting on next Wednesday or not.
So then we come to the 7.2.6, the ad hoc OPEB retirement, and I have been working on a job description for the potential committee members for that committee, because we're reaching out to people outside the library, so they really need a clear idea of what we're looking for and the kind of help we need. So I'm close to being able to send it to you, Ken, for your review. That's where we are. But we probably will have something more concrete by the next commission meeting. And the standard 7.2.7, the standard operating procedures group has not met due to travel schedules, but we will be meeting. We will be meeting shortly. And as I recall, the people on that committee are Paul Grill, right? Tim May, Reese Foxen, Hillary Smith, and myself. Is that correct?
I think so.
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, I have an idea. And my idea is this, is that we commit to fast-tracking this SOP, because I really firmly believe it's at the root of our foundation, how we relate to a lot of varying institutions and functions. And so if we could make sure that everybody in that group could be around and commit to like 2 months, and we meet as much as we need to distill that, take a look at what we've got, and see if we can get this done in 60 days. And maybe start, I don't know, pick something February or something where we start and we really get it done and
Well,
it's a finished product.
Well, I don't think we'll have them all done in 60 days, but I think that we have some topics that we were discussing 6 months ago that we could finish up.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But there's going to be there'll be more things that will need to be done. But I agree, we absolutely need to finish up what we started.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even so sure that what we started. I think we need to review what we started and see if it was focused enough to be something real and tangible.
Yeah. So, okay, so perhaps we can quickly talk about a meeting date in the next few days and schedule something before Christmas. Okay. All right, we'll work on that diligently.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
First of all, there's been a proposal to disband a committee. And since we don't have standard operating procedures, my question is, do we need to take a vote as a commission to disband that committee, or do you as chair agree to disband that committee, or does the committee agree to disband itself?
I think that committee was begun by a former chair.
Yes.
And so the current chair could agree with the committee that it's
with the agreement of the commission. Okay. But I just
but we can put it to the commission, a quick tally. Is there any objections to disbanding the, if there are no, let's see, let me word this correctly. Do you agree that it is, at this time we can disband the Revenue Enhancement Committee? Thumbs up or thumbs down? And we have unanimity from the 10 commissioners who are here. So we will we'll mention this at the next meeting also because Commissioner Foxen is absent. But we do appreciate the hard work that committee, the Revenue Enhancement Committee, did in putting together the information that helped the commission make a decision about the tax measure. So thank you all very much for the work you've done. And now I have probably other committees I can put you on. So, Tim.
I have one other question. The Finance Committee reported that there will be a timeline on the establishment of the 17-18 budget. Does that timeline include a time for the entire commission's input into budgets before we get the proposed budget? Or if we want to have input, should we come to the Finance Committee, but we can't come because, well, I guess maybe we can. We'll have more than a quorum. But
well, I think Ken might want to address this, but the time this process dates, it was just trying to pull all these things together. And the April 3rd, the whole draft budget will be presented and discussed with the full commission, which we'll talk about the fund balance and OPEB and everything. So that's our big April meeting. And of course, any Finance Committee meeting before that, anyone can come. But I understand your point. I think last time, somewhere in there in the process, we went around up and down and, what are your priorities, Commissioner? And each one put in their 2 bits. And so we didn't talk about that at the Finance Committee, but it's a good point. And I'm not seeing it real fast on here. Ken, did we put that on here on this process?
We didn't have that specifically on there. What we talked about was the Finance Committee was the liaison between the full commission, and that input would probably come that way to the Finance Committee meetings each month as we put the budget together.
I know that's been my understanding, and Ken's as well, since we've started, that's the purpose of the budget workshops, is for us to bring a draft budget forward and, get input and reaction from the commissioners, and then we have time to go back and draft a final budget from there.
So basically, if we have thoughts about the budgeting for the next year, we have either speaking to the Finance Committee. So technically, at any of our commission meetings where we have the Finance Committee report, we would have an opportunity at that point to give direct feedback to the Finance Committee. It's been my experience that when we get the budget in April, it's like pretty late to be able to have any input. And this year I don't have any horse to ride on that, but it's more a case of, as you know, if I'll take what's on my mind at this point, is that I'm interested that when we are presented with a budget in the 17-18 year, that it really delineate, and I don't know whether this is appropriate or not, but this is my wish, that it delineate the Y measure funds from the ongoing funds so that we can be tracking that we're doing what we said to the voters. And that's obviously something that I would like to have put into the process before the April meeting when we're presented with a tentative budget.
Well, we did talk about, and there will be separate accounting for the Measure Y funds, that's for sure. I think at the December meeting, because that's just in a couple weeks, let's talk about at the Finance Committee a way for the commissioners to give a little more input on their priorities like we did last year. We'll try to fold that in. I'll put that on the agenda. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any comments from members of the audience? All right. Now we move to item 8, approval of the minutes. Any comments about the minutes from last meeting, from November 14th? Barbara?
We in minutes already? Sorry.
That's it?
I can only do one thing at once. I did, on public appearances, when Jake came down and talked, the second sentence, he gave feedback from his community. I'd line out those 3 words in the county. I'm not sure where they came from. And is anticipating the implementation of the results of Measure Y along with such a presentation, and please add to the Mayors and Council Members Association.
Oh, yeah. Jane, did you get that?
Great, thank you.
Any other comments or corrections? All right. Commissioner Hauser.
I'll move approval of the minutes as with that correction.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Hauser and a second by Commissioner Garcia. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Abstain. Okay, there are 9 ayes, and Commissioner Smith abstains because she was absent. Okay, so there are no items on number 10, the consent calendar. No items under number 12, actions by motion. We have item 13, action by resolution. 13.1, approve resolution of the Sonoma County Library adopting an amendment to its conflict of interest code. Do I have a motion?
Adopt it.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so this is item 13.1. Okay, any comments?
Just
Questions?
a question. On page 2, annual statements, all designated employees shall file statements no later than April 1st. I think we're reminded of this, but I wanted to just verify that we do get a reminder.
Yes, I believe that we always get a reminder that we have to get that taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
And I need a clarification. Do we no longer have to do it through the library, but through our appointing bodies? I tried to read that way, but is that what's happening?
No, I think that they get turned over to the county clerk's office. Is that correct, Jane?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's my understanding, is then the county reminds us of who we have that needs to do this.
But the procedure is still the same.
Right.
We do it through Jane.
Right. There's really only one or two words that have changed in the procedure. The rest was our attorney reminding us that kind of all the boilerplate content that we included in this, since it's part of an ordinance, we don't need to replicate it in the actual document.
Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we have 10 ayes, I believe. Oh, except one commissioner is absent, so we have 9. Paul Grill is away from that. All right, so moving on to item number 14, lab appointments, and we have these are library advisory appointments, and so I'll make the motion. Since it is a member of the Sebastopol Lab, I move by resolution that the Sonoma County Library Commission appoint the following applicant, J.T. O'Neill, to a position on the Sebastopol Library Advisory Board for a term ending on June 30th, 2020. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, again, so we have 9 ayes. Thank you. And let's see, that takes us to item number 15, items to include in commission notes. So I'm open to suggestions. I'm not sure how much of it, did somebody say something?
Yeah, do we mention things like the lab appointment? The lab appointment, the presentation by MidPenn?
Right. I'm wondering how much detail on the MidPenn, but I'll let you work that out. If I can help in any way. Let's see. I think that did you say the presentation by the lab, by the Santa Rosa Lab? That was a good.
Santa Rosa Lab?
Yeah.
Presentation by Santa Rosa Lab.
That the Revenue Enhancement Committee is disbanding at this time because of the successful passing of Measure Y.
And there'll be a big party, kind of a wake that we're going to have for the passing of the... No, we can't.
A wake?
You're going to have another meeting to celebrate having no more meetings.
There you go. I like that.
And not to forget the part that some of the work is folded into advocacy. We don't want it to, look like we're not ever going to try to get any more revenue from anyone.
Do we want to talk about the forthcoming reopening of the Cloverdale branch?
Yes.
And the anticipated renovation of Northwest starting next year?
I would also like to include our thanks to Patrick.
Yes. With a photo.
I'd like to make a note of the Santa Rosa Lab moving its meetings to the last Wednesday of every other month.
And I think that it might be nice to put in why. I think that's that it's an effort to try to engage more with the commission.
Mm-hmm. Since we're mentioning several lab things, is this a good place to put when there are lab openings?
Yes.
The Runner Park, Cotati has a lab opening, and I don't know how many others there are, but this goes to council members and so forth. They might, be interested in encouraging people.
And I also wanted to say how I think that the notes always look great, but I thought that the last notes that you sent out were really well put together. Thanks. All right. One thing that we didn't talk about was the correspondence and press coverage, and I'm really glad that Barbara brought that article about the firefighters at the Central Branch for the reading program, because I saw that too, and I thought that was really eye-catching. So that might be a good thing to also just make a comment about those kinds of programs that we have. I know different branches do different things. Like I believe Sebastopol gets the chief of police and the fire chief and different things. But this is such a nice big event, I think, with a fire truck. It's not a book, but... Okay, so that takes us to any agenda items for the next commission meeting.
Yeah, I won't be here.
60 days. 60 days is going to just fly by, Paul. Didn't you want to get that done in 60 days?
Yeah.
So are you going to need a video conference in?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you going to be? Email me.
Yeah.
All right, so if you think of agenda items, please let me know.
Are we going to be discussing the draft thing? We had the presentation about the giant plan at next meeting, January meeting.
At that, I believe that's going to be on the agenda. The final facilities management master plan.
Yes.
And how much time are you going to? Will it be like a half an hour, do you think, discussion, or is it going to be?
I was thinking around 20 minutes.
Okay. You have a question, Commissioner?
Yes,
Joe?
I do. What about moving forward with our retreat agenda? And how do we dovetail that in?
Right. Reese Foxon has, I've asked her to look into a couple of things. She had some ideas, so she was going to meet with Hillary and me, but she is out of the area right now, so we will get that together soon. There's a lot of ideas floating around as to what we can do at a retreat.
Right.
So we welcome hearing your ideas before we come up with a plan.
Okay.
But we do have some ideas. I think getting the location and those sort of things are not as hard to do as pulling together a facilitator. Okay. All right. Then I think that the next meeting will be January 9th at 6:30 p.m. here in the Santa Rosa City Council chambers. And we are adjourned at 9:20. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.